Hello everyone, my name is Holger and this video discusses a few scenes in the Season 2 trailer of the Wheel of Time TV show. Specifically, I'm going to ask the question whether a person seen in these scenes who looks like Swan actually is Swan. You may be surprised by the answer. But first a spoiler warning. This video does contain moderate spoilers for the first 4 books, up until The Shadow Rising. I recommend that before watching this video you watch the first season of the TV show and read the first 4 books first, in order to avoid having your reading enjoyment spoiled. I also mentioned background information provided in the prequel New Spring, but without spoiling any plot points in that book. So let me drop a bombshell right at the start. There's reason to believe that the person in these pictures is not Swan, but actually Lanfear in disguise. I will provide detailed evidence for this in this video, but just to let you know where this is going, what I'm going to show is that the assumption that this person is Swan leads to a lot of inconsistencies related to Swan's political situation, her motives, and her character. If we assume that this is really Lanfear, who has a specific secret agenda, and for that impersonates Swan, then the scenes make much more sense. The first problem to discuss is the notion of whether Swan would leave the tower and travel at all during Season 2. Which would be very problematic for her. This is mostly because we know from Season 1 that a simmering rebellion against Swan is brewing among the Red Arja, which has also spread to some of the other Arjas. The goal appears to be to eventually unseat Swan, and Swan's hold on power is apparently already weakening. We hear about that from Alana and Mygan. This is made worse by the fact that Mygan, the head of the Blue Arja, and one of Swan's most influential supporters in the tower, leaves the tower to investigate events on the west coast. So, in addition to the rebellion, Swan's base of power among the Blue may also be weakening. Moraine has plenty of opportunity to talk to Swan about all of that during the night together, in between certain other activities. So there's no doubt that, at least by the end of episode 6, Swan knows perfectly well just how precarious her situation is. In that kind of a situation, when opposition is forming within the tower to unseat Swan, the single worst thing Swan could possibly do is leave the tower, for any reason. Doing so would create a power vacuum in the tower, and the opposition would immediately jump onto their chance and unseat Swan, similar to how this was done in Book 4, but now with Swan not even having any chance to prevent that from happening or to defend herself. When I first saw images of Swan stepping out of a carriage in Season 2, apparently in a location that is not Valon, I became worried, simply because it makes no sense for Swan to travel during Season 2, and if she does so anyway in the show, then that might indicate that the writers decided to have Swan make an unwise, out-of-character decision just to have a pretext for her to later be deposed. That would have been extremely lazy writing, and I really hoped that the carriage scene could be explained as something, anything, other than actual travel during Season 2, perhaps a flashback. Then we get the Season 2 trailer scene in which Swan talks to Rand, and the topic of the discussion makes it clear that this cannot be a flashback. Also, the scene appears to take place in Cairhien, based on the rising sun imagery, which suggests that Swan somehow had her giant throne transported from Tar Valon to Cairhien, and apparently just happened to find a vacant throne room in Cairhien to put it in. Seriously? This was the point when I started wondering whether there's something wrong here. For one thing, even if Swan had made the unwise decision to travel, carrying the pieces of her disassembled throne around with her would have slowed her down, prolonged her travel, and therefore increased her risk even further. On top of that, why would she even need her throne? King Galdrian, the ruler of Cairhien, would certainly not appear before Swan on Swan's throne in his own city. He would insist that Swan come to his throne room. The only characters we see Swan talk to in Cairhien are Rand and possibly Moraine, although that is unconfirmed because we never see Moraine and Swan in the same frame together. So let's assume for a moment that Swan really needed to urgently talk to Moraine in Cairhien face to face, and traveled to Cairhien because of that. How would that conversation take place? Definitely not by Swan getting dressed up in full regalia and then talking down to Moraine from her throne. More likely like this, as we have seen in Season 1. All Swan needs for that in Cairhien is a room with a door that can be locked from the inside. Nothing else. Certainly no throne. The whole idea of Swan talking down to Moraine is completely out of character for her. Also, Swan would be taking a big risk in even talking to Moraine after exiling her, especially in a place where others might walk in, like a throne room. Then there's the content of what she said, telling Moraine that she cannot control him, presumably Rand. Really? The 20-year mission Swan and Moraine have been on has been all about finding the Dragon Reborn, and then guiding and controlling him towards his fight in the last battle, in some way, even if the control happens indirectly, for example through reverse psychology if needed. Surely Swan is not suggesting that the whole plan should be changed now. This too is out of character for her. Then there's the scene with Swan talking down to Rand from her throne. This is another scene that is out of character. In Season 1 we saw how Swan talks to people she thinks may be the Dragon Reborn when she talked to Egwene and Nynaeve. At that time Moraine thought that one of them was probably the Dragon Reborn. Swan did not get dressed up in full regalia, sit on her throne, summon both of them to her, have them curtsy, bow, and kiss her ring. Instead, she put on a comfy dress, invited them into a private study, and told them to call her Swan. That is how Swan handles situations like this. She's a very informal person who resorts to formality only when absolutely required, for example because of Tower law. She's absolutely not the kind of person who travels around the world with her own throne. Next, there's the content of what she told Rand. You're the water that turns the wheel itself. Seriously? The wheel is the mechanism that controls the whole world, so if Rand is supposedly the power behind that, then he is essentially God, so Swan has just elevated Rand to godhood. Is that really the message Swan and Moraine want to send to Rand? How is Moraine supposed to help and guide Rand if Rand thinks of himself as God, and therefore feels that he does not need any guidance? This is the point when it became clear to me that this woman in the trailer who looks like Swan could not possibly be Swan, because she acts in a way that is completely out of character for Swan. Just for comparison, here's what the real Swan told Nynaeve in Season 1, when Nynaeve was unhappy about the idea of being pulled into the story surrounding the Dragon Reborn in the last battle.
The wheel does not care if you are young or afraid, petty or weak. It certainly doesn't care what you want. The wheel calls you to this, whether you can bear it or not. The last battle is coming. What any of us want now is meaningless. The only thing that matters is what you do.
Swan calls Nynaeve to duty and public service, telling Nynaeve that her own wishes need to take a backseat for a while so she can serve the common good. That is exactly the kind of message the real Swan would have given Rand. She would have emphasized that Rand should be proud of being a spoke in the wheel and encouraged him to embrace the responsibility that comes with that and to work together with anyone else who may be a spoke in the wheel. If we look at what the Swan look-alike is doing here, she is telling Moraine that she cannot control Rand, implying that Moraine should not even try, and that Rand is a god who can do everything by himself and therefore does not have to listen to advice. Basically, she's trying to pull Moraine and Rand away from each other and encouraging Rand to make decisions on his own without consulting others. So if you assume that this Swan look-alike is an imposter, who could it be? It has to be a person who is good at using disguises, who can effectively impersonate other people, and who has an interest in elevating Rand while pulling him away from Moraine. There's only one person in the early books who fits that description, and that is Lanfear. Throughout the Great Hunt, Lanfear repeatedly tries to convince Rand to take the Horn of Valyr to seek glory for himself, obviously assuming that she can then later rule through Rand by manipulating him. So the bottom line is, the way I interpret these scenes, Swan is not traveling to Cairhien or anywhere else in Season 2, and that giant throne is not being transported anywhere. It's really just Lanfear all the way. There are a few loose ends left to discuss. First, are those scenes real in-world scenes or dreams of some form? For example, dream shards that Lanfear creates into which she then pulls Rand and Moraine. The latter is more likely. Not only would it be difficult for Lanfear to set up the logistics of actually faking a real travel delegation along with a duplicate of the throne, but also encapsulating everything inside of a dream would make it harder for Moraine to see through the deception, because Moraine would likely shrug off any oddities in fake Swan's behavior as being a side effect of the dream environment. There's also a hint in the lighting in one of the scenes that points towards those scenes being dreams. Have a look at the so-called God rays that we see in the scene. These kinds of volumetric effects can occur naturally, but in this scene they are clearly exaggerated, especially the wide angle between the rays around the crossbeams above Swan's throne. They make it look like the light source is right behind that crossbeam. This means the rays appear to come from an artificial light source, not the sun. Real-life God rays from sunlight would be much more parallel to each other with this scene setup. It also has the effect of making fake Swan, aka Lanfear, appear to be bathed in the light, almost like an angelic figure. I'm sure Lanfear is getting a kick out of this, especially since she is a member of the Shadow. Exaggerated lighting effects are often used in dream sequences. Then there's the interesting symbolism of Rand's relationship to the wheel. We see 3 different versions of that. First, there's the concept of Rand being bound to the wheel. We never see that textually, but only the images showing Rand shackled to a giant wheel. Next, there's Rand's own metaphor of being a spoke in the wheel. And finally, we have Fake Swan's metaphor of Rand being the water that turns the wheel. I think what is happening here is, in Season 2, and possibly also in later seasons, we will have 3 characters that each try to pull Rand onto their sides: Ishamael, Lanfear, and Moraine, and each one of them will use a different metaphor to describe Rand's relationship to the wheel. Lanfear considers Rand the water that turns the wheel, which elevates Rand. Moraine considers him a spoke in the wheel, emphasizing the need to cooperate with others. And Ishamael talks about Rand being bound to the wheel, something I don't want to interpret here for spoiler reasons, but which should be clear to book readers. Assuming I'm correct with my theory that the Swan lookalike is Lanfear, I'm actually really happy with that decision by the writers. It would mean that, just like we got Dana as a surprise dark friend in Season 1, we may get Swan as a surprise Lanfear disguise in Season 2. It will also help keep the behavior of the real Swan in Season 2 much more in character, and will allow Swan to spend Season 2 in the Tower, where I expect a lot of very interesting things to happen this season. We're getting to the end of this video. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments whether you think my theory is correct and how you feel about it. Also, if you like this kind of analysis and theory crafting, you may also want to check out the other videos on this channel, which have a lot more analysis for Season 1 and predictions for Season 2. Thanks again, and that's it for now.